Hey guys, my name is Subaan. I am currently a second year medical student at Imperial, and welcome to this Anki tutorial walkthrough kind of thing. So basically the reason I'm creating this is because initially when I started last year, I had no idea how to study or work. So I kind of came across Anki and just decided to dedicate myself to it and kind of hoped that it would work, and it did work out quite well. It became the foundation of my workflow throughout the entire of my first year. However, it is quite an intimidating program to use at first because the user interface is quite hard to navigate. It's very raw and very simple, which means it's a very stable program and very reliable, but it can be a bit daunting to use at first. So yeah, it's a very versatile flashcard program, and it can basically do whatever you want if you know how to do it. I've spent hours on Reddit forums, reading the Anki manual, and separate Anki forums to kind of learn how to tailor things in the most efficient and optimal manner for the style of information that we have to learn as medical students. And a few friends of mine have over the year have asked me to help them get started with Anki and whatnot. Setting it up and some of the small things that I've learned with my time using it. So I've decided to make this kind of somewhat comprehensive breakdown to help you get through your year at medical school, whatever year you're in, and learn how to use Anki to the best of your own ability, I guess. This is going to be quite long, but luckily YouTube has 2x playback to save your time. And I'll also post timestamps in the notes below for different sections, so you can kind of skip to parts that you need to know now or that you want to look back at in the future if you forget anything or want to learn something new later on. I do plan on going through basically everything that I do know about Anki, from the basic user interface to how to make some basic cards, and then more advanced notes and card types and how to adjust settings to work for you, and then eventually going on to how to study with custom and filtered decks, how to kind of organize that workflow, and how to even use the Anki iOS app, so that if you haven't even heard of Anki before this video, then hopefully you'll be able to start using it fairly comfortably by the end of it and cracking away. But before we do get properly started, I do just want to mention that I'm by no means an expert in using Anki. I've basically just learned everything that I do know by trial and error and just a lot of reading. So I do recommend that you play around a bit as well, just to kind of learn things that way as well, because it's always better to do things from experience. And near the end of this tutorial, when I do start talking about organization of your decks and how you should study and whatnot, that's basically what I've done and what has worked for me. For that kind of stuff, you do really want to experiment for yourself, and figure out what works for you. It might be the complete opposite to what I do, and if it works for you, then that's great. It's just I'm just kind of giving recommendations because it can be quite confusing as to how you should be doing things. But yeah, hopefully this does help. So what is Anki? Essentially, this is Anki. It is basically a flashcard program that's designed for gradually prolonged spaced repetition. And why would you want to have a program that does that? Well, basically research shows that spaced repetition is the most efficient way to remember information, any kind of information, whether it be like vocab for a language or definitions or anatomy. Just any kind of information is probably most efficiently remembered by repeating it. And it's not just simple repetition, it's spaced repetition and spacing that gradually gets longer in between each time you repeat it. So that means, say if I look at a flashcard that has a definition for something, I look at that definition and I'm like, okay, I can remember that for a certain amount of time. And then, I might repeat it in 3 days, and then I'll see if I've remembered that definition. If I do, simple repetition would mean that you'll just repeat it in 3 days again. However, prolonged, gradual or spaced repetition means that I would actually, instead of repeating it in 3 days again, I'd repeat it in about 5 days or 7 days. And the aim is to try and repeat that definition or whatever that piece of information is when you're about to forget that piece of information, because you need to use quite a lot of brain power to try and pull it out of your memory when you're starting to forget it. That probably enhances the neural connections for that memory or something, but it really does let you remember things for long periods of time that way. And it also helps with quick recall and whatnot, which is, kind of what you want for exams. So basically, Anki is a program that allows you to do that, or like automates when you're going to next repeat a card. So imagine if you had, handwritten flashcards on pieces of paper, and you had to organize them into how difficult you found certain cards, and then when you think you're going to forget it, and then when you're going to repeat it. Trying to organize all of that is quite difficult to do. So what Anki does, it basically records date. So you rate the difficulty of each card, and then according to that difficulty, it will repeat that card in a certain amount of time, and it will become longer and longer. So your first time you see a flashcard on Anki, it might say, you're going to repeat it in 10 minutes. And then within 10 minutes, you'll repeat it, and then it won't say you're going to repeat it in 10 minutes again. Say if you found it easy the next time you repeated it, it might say, you're next going to see it in 3 days, and then you'll see it in 3 days. And then say if you completely forgot it, you can reset it all the way back to 10 minutes again. Or say if you found it really easy, it might say, okay, because you found it easy, you're going to see this card in 2 weeks time now. And when you see it in 2 weeks time, if you still found it easy, it will come in 4 weeks, or it might come in a few days if you found it difficult to remember. And that way you end up prioritizing information that you find easy to remember. You prioritize information that you find hard to remember, sorry. And the stuff you find easy to remember is obviously stuff that you need to repeat less, so that just naturally happens. So Anki automates all of that. All you really need to do is create the flashcards and do them. You don't need to worry about the organization. However, there are features within Anki that allow you to adjust it to suit you. The reason this is good to memorize stuff, especially as medical students, is although understanding and deep knowledge is key to become a good doctor, there are undoubtedly many parts within this field that require simple memorization, whether it be reference ranges for certain cells within the blood or something, or certain definitions. So yeah, that kind of stuff does require simple memorization, at least for the exams anyway. But if you are clever in the way that you use Anki and use it to its full potential, it can be used to consolidate information and develop that deeper understanding where you can link pieces of information together that you may never have thought about before, whilst you're practicing medicine. And then that's the kind of stuff you need. And Anki can be used to facilitate that kind of deep understanding and knowledge, if you do use it in a certain way. And hopefully I can get that kind of concept through to you as well in this video. Basically, the way I did do that was I'd create basic cards, just a simple definition or something, define this. And then I'd have another card that kind of develops on that definition, kind of applying it slightly. Then I'd also have another flashcard that was also relating to that definition, but, in a completely different way. And it just required the context of that definition. And then, it kind of built it all together. I basically went through and followed the progression of lectures. So I went through every single lecture and made a flashcard on every single point that was mentioned by a lecturer in every single lecture. So in the end, it did take me quite a lot of time, but I did end up having every single point mentioned by all the lecturers in every lecture in a flashcard format. And I somehow memorized, pretty much all of it to a decent level. And I also created them in a way that let me link pieces of information together that weren't, initially mentioned in the lecture. So I feel like I managed to accomplish that, and hopefully I can get that through to you today. When you follow through lectures, the way they actually talk in the lectures, the lecturers, they start off with very simple concepts. So they might mention PCR. They'll say PCR is this, and then I'll make a card on that, PCR, what is PCR, and then have the answer on the flashcard. But then later on in the lecture, they'll start talking about the process of how PCR works, and then the uses and drawbacks and benefits. That gradually just naturally happens in the lecture. And I would be making flashcards on every single point. So although some points might be repeated, like the simple parts of it, there'll be additions of more complex, details of that specific process. And that's essentially how I got to that. Whilst just doing flashcards is quite good, and you can download flashcards, online for certain topics and areas and whatnot. I do recommend that you make your own flashcards as well, because the creation process of having to think of a question about a certain concept and condensing a lecture information into suitable formats for flashcards helps to develop that understanding of the information in the first place without even having done the flashcard. I do recommend taking a bit of time with creating your flashcards. And at first you might be quite slow with it. I know I was definitely quite slow, and I found it hard to think of because in lectures they aren't saying a question then answering, saying a question answering. They would just be talking about a certain concept or something, and trying to think of a question that can apply to that piece of information and creating it. At first it's quite difficult to do for certain topics and concepts, but you get used to it with experience and you can become quite efficient, and you will see patterns on how certain types of information can be made into flashcards. So yeah, that's essentially what Anki is and why I use it and why I recommend, other, not just medical students, just anyone who needs to study and memorize things. So I guess I'll get into how to get Anki and start using it. All right, so in order to get Anki, you're going to have to go to their website and just click download, and then obviously get it for Windows or Mac, depending on what you have. And then after you've got that and installed it, it is free, or for the computer anyway. I recommend you go onto Anki Web and then make an Anki account. Just click sign up and it's pretty quick. Just do that, and then from that, what that allows you to do is when you do go into the Anki app, at first it won't look like this for you. It'll probably just be like this, except without all of these decks, since this is my current profile. If I just quickly switch to this test profile, which is what I've kind of made for this walkthrough, this is probably more like what you will see when you first open it. But you'll see in this corner here, there's a synchronize button. If you click on that, it will ask, well, for the first time, it will ask you to log in, but I've already got it linked up. And basically the advantage of that is it backs up all of your cards. I have like 10,000 flashcards. If I like lost my laptop and they were all gone, I don't even want to think about that. Like, I'll just probably have a full mental breakdown. But yeah, so if you have that account, if you have the account and link it to your Anki on your laptop or computer, it will back up all your cards onto the Anki cloud, the servers. And then it also allows you to actually use those flashcards on your phone or iPad or tablet, whatever you have. If you have the app for that, you just sign in and you just sign in on your phone or whatever on the app, and you'll kind of download all the cards as well. So then you have multiple backups, which is always good. And then you also have access to it, like if you're on the go. So if you just got a long commute, you can just be doing your flashcards. So just sitting there dawdling around, always good to be productive. So yeah, I'll at the end of this video, I will be going through the Anki iOS app, since I have an iPhone and an iPad, so I use the iOS app. It does cost £24, I believe, off the App Store for it, and I do recommend buying it if you do plan on using Anki as the base of your studying workflow, purely because because the computer version is free, the app actually helps to support the free version of the computer, and two, it is actually made by the Anki developers, so it's very well kept. It's very easy to use. It's very simple and it's very stable. On Android, they don't make an Anki app directly. There is a version called Anki Droid, which is made by a third party. That is free. However, I've never really used it. So yeah, you can get that if you have an Android. I guess there's no harm, especially if it's free. But yeah, I'll do a quick walkthrough and come back to the app later on in this video, probably nearer the end, when I talk about filtered decks and how to study and whatnot, and how to use your flashcard decks. Yeah, now I guess I'll just kind of get started on what the buttons are in Anki and where everything kind of is situated, and then I'll gradually get into how to make some cards. Okay, so once you have Anki installed and synchronized and just set up at a basic level, you'll probably have something that looks like this. And what I'll do is just kind of take a run through of the basic user interface. If you've downloaded the newest version of Anki, it might look a bit different, but all the buttons should be in basically the same place. I still use the older version just because I started off with that and the new version wasn't released. And this one has the more raw user interface. But because it's very stable, I'm fine with using it, and I've kind of learned where everything is, so I'm used to it. With the new one, it does look a bit nicer, and it might be a bit easier to use visually and whatnot. I know my younger brother uses it, and but I have seen that it's crashed in one or two places because they're still developing it. So you can either use this one or the new one, whichever one, it doesn't really matter. All the buttons should be in the same place, and all of the functions are still the same. I think it's just a matter of stability. So yeah, let's start. So what you'll have in the top left-hand corner is obviously all the basic, program options. You can have all your different profiles, import and export your flashcard decks. A few options in here. I'll kind of go over some of them later on and just help guides and whatnot. If you click on decks here, nothing will probably happen because you're already at your deck page and you'll have all of your different flashcard decks. So you create a flashcard and it goes into a deck, and then you can have sub decks and whatnot within a deck and everything. The way you create a deck is down here. Click create deck, name it whatever, like new deck. And then you have a new flashcard deck. You can create subdecks just by dragging one and just dropping it underneath another one. And now you see this is the new deck is now a subdeck within the example deck, and you can open it and close it. And you can organize it in that kind of fashion and stuff. So I'll just drag it outside and just so it's got a separate deck. So decks doesn't really do much if you're already at your deck page. If you click add, it's quite self-explanatory. You start adding your flashcards. Over here you'll have your card types. So the ones I'll be going through is basic, the basic reversed cards, closed cards I'll go over very briefly, but I'll probably spend most of my time going through image occlusion, enhanced cards. But for now I'll just stay on the basic card, and I'll go through those in later on. And over here you have your deck. So you can choose what deck that you're adding your flashcards to. Over here you've got some formatting options for your text that you type on your flashcard. Fields and cards here you can probably ignore for now. That kind of comes into more complex features that are probably going to be outside of the scope of this video. This is just so this video is just so you can actually start using Anki at a decent level and just kind of be comfortable with it. At the bottom you have tags. This is what I primarily use to organize your flashcards. So you can kind of pinch and pull at different topics of flashcards that you want at your will, basically. And yeah, that's basically how you add a flashcard. On the front, for a basic flashcard, you have the front, which is your question, your back, which is your answer. Fairly basic, and you just click add, and it will add the flashcard to the deck that you have selected. And I'll kind of go through that and create some examples and whatnot later on when I actually start showing you how to make different types of cards. And then the next important button is the browse function, and basically this is where you'll kind of be doing all of your manipulating of your flashcards and stuff. If you click on whole collection, you'll probably obviously have nothing. I've just imported some examples into here. The current deck you have selected, obviously cards that you've added today, studied today and whatnot. And then you'll have your decks here with this icon here. So these are the decks that I have added in this account. And then these are the different card types that I was showing earlier. So you can, if you want to search a specific card type, if I click on this, these are all of my image occlusion cards. If I click on this, these are all my basic card types. And then down here you have tags. Obviously you won't have any if you're starting off, but because these cards, if you look at the bottom here, they do have tags on them, it automatically adds the tags here. And then if I want to see all of my let's say immunology cards that have been tagged with immunology, I get them here. And that's basically how this is kind of organized. Up here you can obviously just click on this, start adding more cards. If you want to see the info regarding a card, you can get that. You're probably never going to have to use that. Suspending a card basically means that you pause the card, you never see it again. I'll until you unsuspend it, basically. And I'll get into that later. If you want to change deck, you can click on the card. Say if you've realized you added it to the wrong deck, you click on it, click change deck, or you can even click on multiple cards, click change deck, and then select the other deck that you want to move the card to, and just click move cards, and it'll move it. That's quite simple. You can add tags later on if you forgot to add them while actually adding your card. You can just click add tags, or select the card, click add tags, and you can add whatever tags. Or you can even just click on the card that you want to add it to and just add it at the bottom down here. And then obviously you can remove tags, and you can also just delete a card. And that's basically the user interface. That's where everything kind of is laid out. And now I'll kind of, what I'll do is I'll quickly show you what it might look like once you've actually started using Anki. So if I just switch profile back to my actual profile, It's saying sync failed just because, you know, I'm not connected to the internet right now, just to prevent any like disturbances. But yeah, so this is kind of what I have. This 1 means year 1, so this was my year 1 stuff, and these were the modules inside. You can see I've kind of got a gross organization rather than like a deck per lecture, and I don't really recommend doing that. I recommend when it comes down to the more minute organization that you use tags, so you can still pull cards out per lecture or per topic. But and I'll kind of show you, it'll probably make more sense later on when I go into more detail about that and how to do it. And you see I just have the basic modules, and you'll see that there are no kind of cards due or new. That's because if I go into browse and I click on my year 1 deck here, you see they're all yellow. Basically what the yellow means is that they are suspended, because obviously I don't want to have my year 1 cards coming up all the time and, you know, just cluttering everything. And it'll come up with like, oh, I have 1,000 cards, flashcards to do today, and I'll be like on the brink of a breakdown, but I just realized that it's, you know, year 1 card. So I've just suspended them so they don't come up. However, I can also unsuspend them at any time, and, you know, if I do want to study them, I can, but, you know, I don't really need to for now. So I've just kind of left it like that. If I click on year 2, you'll see that most of them are, you know, okay, maybe not most of them. If I go further down, yeah, here we go. Most of them are just normal, just grey. They're not yellow. That's because they're just there to study, so they can come up, you know, when they're meant to. And you'll see, so I've got that in basic subdecks. If I minimize that, this is my current thing that I'm working on. Ignore these blue decks at the bottom, they're custom filtered decks. I'll get into them later on, but I basically use them mostly to actually study my cards. And here you see I have my modules, and, you know, I've got some due and whatnot, and if I go into them, that's that. And then I've got all of my tags down here, so if I want to find, you know, I've kind of organized it by lecture. Say if I want to see physiology of blood cells and terminology, I get all of the flashcards that were tagged with that. And that's basically how the basic organization works. And what custom filtered decks allow you to do is pick cards relating to a tag. So if I want to study regulation of lymphocyte responses just on its own, I can make a filtered custom deck that will just pull out those cards. Yeah, and I guess next to each deck or subdeck, you will have options. And I'll get into these settings later on when it comes down to the more minute details. And, you know, it's quite flexible once you kind of figure out what everything means, and I'll slowly go through all of that. Yeah, so that's the basic user interface of Anki, and hopefully that makes sense. So now I'll just kind of go on to adding different types of cards, different card examples, and show some of the ones that I have from last year and this year so far. So you can kind of see what you can kind of do with Anki in general. Okay, so if we click on add and we start getting like into the details of the different types of cards. So initially you'll probably start off with the basic card type, and the basic card type is your, you know, standard bread and butter flashcard. Question on the front, answer on the back. That's all it is. So it's pretty easy to do. You know, you'll be on the basic card type. Choose the deck you want to add it to, like depending on what module or whatever, and then you have your question on the front and then answer on the back. You can add tags to help organize things on a more minute level. Let's just add 1 or 2 tags, even though they're completely unrelated right now, like that. And the good thing about this is that you don't have to add the tags every time. So for each lecture, my set of tags tend to stay the same. I'll quickly find an example. If I go on browse, I'll click on my example deck. Let's see, so what is FH? And so here I have year 1, so it was for year 1. MCD was the main module, and then within that module it was metabolism, and within metabolism it was the cholesterol lecture. And then I'll just usually keep this set of tags for that entire lecture, and I don't really change it around, just so there's, you know, some kind of system to it. And if I go back to add, what I'll do is I'll add, say, you know, those tags or whatever, like I did last time. Have my question and then and then answer, and then so I have that. It's going to add to, let's say, the example deck. And I click add, and you see how the tags remain. So you don't have to keep adding the tags on each every time you add a card. So it's quite easy. All you have to do is just change it per lecture. And that's how you add a basic flashcard. And you know, most of your flashcards are probably just going to be basic flashcards. And the way I built a kind of level of understand, like the way the level of understanding and complexity of the card increases. So I'd always start off, like I mentioned earlier in the intro, that I kind of followed the structure of the lecture. In the structure of the lectures, usually it starts off simple and then it kind of expands on those concepts it started off mentioning at the beginning. So if I carry on with the example of polymerase chain reaction, so PCR, it will start off like, what is PCR? And it's like, you know, PCR is a method of cloning a specific, you know, sequence or whatnot. Then from there, it will be summarize or describe the process of PCR. So now you're getting into the more details of what PCR actually is. And then on top of that, they might explain, you know, some other methods of cloning specific parts of DNA. And then you do like, what is this? And then, you know, explain or like describe that process. And then after that, at the end of the lecture, they might compare the two. So it will be like compare PCR and whatever method they might have spoken, whatever other method they might have spoken about. And then after that, explain or, you know, discuss the advantages and disadvantages of this process and that process, and why they're used, and then explain why PCR is used to clone this type of DNA, and why is a different method used to clone that. And you know, it starts to get onto a more deeper level of understanding, and that's how I kind of structure my cards. And I don't really force that. I do kind of think about what kind of keywords in the question that I'm using. Like, you know, if you think about A-level biology, you have the list questions, describe, summarize, compare, explain. Those kind of keywords for the questions kind of determines how much detail will be in the answer of that flashcard. I keep that in mind, but I don't really force it too much, just because the progress of the lecture kind of automatically does that for you. So that's how I get the increasing level of depth within each flashcard as I go for it. And yeah, so that's how you create a basic flashcard. So you'll have like question and then answer, you know, ignore my typos and whatnot. And then you just click add, and you know, just go through the lecture and add it. Obviously you don't have to do it that way, but as in that's basically how you add a card. And you know, you can choose your deck and everything. I think the great thing about Anki is that because it's on a computer, you can add, and it's a very open software. You can add literally anything into the front or back, so for the question or the answer. So you can add screenshots and images and obviously text, but even sound and videos, which is actually quite amazing. So if I have like, you know, list the branches of the external carotid artery, and say you have to list them. And now in the answer, you could literally just, you know, list the different branches, or instead of that, you could get the image exactly, screenshot it like this, and then go back and paste it in. And if I add this, that card is now being added. So if I quickly go on to browse, click added today, you'll see this. So this is kind of what it looks like. If you click on preview, so it says list the branches of the external carotid artery, and click enter. And now instead of it just being, you know, a boring piece of text, like a list of text, you can't really put much of that context in it. However, if there's the actual image, now I can go through, find the external carotid artery, and, you know, follow the branches up. And now I have a much more like contextualized understanding of the branches of the external carotid artery. And then obviously, you know, with repetition, I'd be able to, you know, get better at it. I think that's one of the main things of Anki, is how it's so flexible, and in terms of like the content you can put in it. And basically in this browse option, so this is how I currently go through my cards. So say if I add a card and I realize I want to add or change something, if you click on browse, I click on added today because, you know, I just added it, and I click on the, you know, the card that I want to change, and then I'll click on and then if you click on back, or even here, or for the front, you can just edit the card here, and, you know, you can add some, you know, supplementary text. you just click preview and you see how it's already changed. You don't even have to enter the change and it just changes straight up like that. So it's very easy to manipulate the card. One thing that I'll just quickly get into now, just because I'm already in here, is the search function within Anki, which is extremely useful. It's probably also one of the amazing features of Anki is, say if you click on your whole collection, or say if like you were going through a card and then you realize something, oh, I can't remember this detail which is related to this. You can go to the relevant deck or tag. Let's just go into the example thing, and now you can just search anything. So anything that's either in the question or the answer. If I just type in carotid, it will come up with this because obviously it's got that in it. If I type in lung, it'll come up with this. Although in the question it doesn't say thoracic ultra, it doesn't say lung in the actual question. It says lung somewhere in here. Yeah, lung there. So it will pick out any card. In this like account I have loaded for this tutorial, I don't have many cards listed in here, but it would list out all of them. So if I said lung or ultrasound or ultrasound, it comes up with all of the cards that have ultrasound in it. And you can search for phrases as well, like what is, and then so what is FH, what is this and that, and it's a very good search feature. Or you can search keywords like MHC, and so from there it comes up with some of the cards that I have on MHC that's been mentioned either in here or in the actual answer somewhere. And you see in these examples of cards, like these are quite large cards. So here I said summarize the structure of MHC class 1 and 2 and note the key differences between them. And now when you think about actually having to write out that answer, it's quite hard, and imagine just trying to do it with text. With this, what I do is usually I have a set of notes, pre-made notes from older years open, so Laz's notes or anyone you can get off the note bank. And because he's already got it written down, I don't really need to add anything to it. There's no point in me wasting my time getting my own pictures and writing out my own text within the actual answer of the card. So I just kind of made a screenshot of it and pasted it in. So the best way to make screenshots is on Windows to use hold down the Windows button, hold down Shift and click S, and then it'll kind of get the selection tool. You just kind of drag the area of the screen that you want to screenshot, and then just screenshots it, copies it onto your clipboard, and you can just paste it into the answer section. Or if you're on a Mac, I believe it is Command Alt Shift 4, and you can do the exact same thing. So you don't have to save the picture or anything like that. And then if you preview this card, so you have the question there, and now you see I have a very extensive answer in there. And when I actually made this flashcard, it took me about 2 minutes to make. Actually less than that, probably about 30 seconds. Write out the question and then paste in the answer basically. Obviously I do read through it before I paste it in, make sure everything lines up and it's relevant. A lot of the time I do hold in extra information or information that doesn't directly relate to the question, or like overlapping information with another question, just so it's a matter of repetition. If I have a bit more time, I can read through that extra detail, or if I don't, then it's just like at least I'm getting some kind of context through it. So I do tend to have quite a lot of information usually, but that also means that I kind of have to look through the text and the answer to see where to try and find the answer. So it's not a matter of just a simple answer straight into my face, and then you don't really know if you actually did take in the answer, or you're just, oh yeah, I knew that. So you do sometimes have to read through it. That's the way I like to make my cards. Obviously you don't have to do it like that, but it's what worked for me. So that's what I'm just going to be trying to show to you guys. Images and text is quite obvious, and I did mention earlier that you can even add sound and video. I have an example here where we had a lecture on thoracic ultrasounds, and so the lecturer described the normal how a lung looks like on an ultrasound, and she had video clips. It makes sense when you're actually looking at the video clip and she's describing it. And there are certain terminology. So for a normal thoracic ultrasound of the lung, what you expect to see in a normal situation is the gliding pleura or sliding lung sign, which is here. So I could say what do you expect on a normal thoracic ultrasound, and it will just be gliding pleura or sliding lung sign. And okay, that's the answer, but what does that mean? So instead I kind of changed around the question a bit, and I said describe this thoracic ultrasound. So I don't know if it's meant to be normal, and because I downloaded the video and I attached the video into the flashcard, so now I actually see the video, and then after that I can click enter and then see what the answer was. And I also have a few others where what's the diagnosis of this ultrasound, and it's like I've got and then this is a different one, and it's like what's the diagnosis of this ultrasound of the lung, and from there make the answers. And obviously in first year it's not really necessary. I just kind of did it just to experiment with the feature, but it also did kind of solidify that knowledge in my head in terms of what does a gliding pleural sign mean, and what does a small pleural effusion look like, and it will obviously help in more clinical years. And the way you basically add that kind of media to it is you just click on this. So in your answer, you'll just click attach sound or video, and it supports a lot of different media types. Find the sound or video clip, and you just attach it as the answer, and it will just upload it. It might take a few seconds, and then you just add the card, and that also comes up on your phone like that. It will come up with the video or the sound. So in future clinical years, say if you need to know what different kind of heart sounds sound like, you can make a card saying what's the diagnosis of this heart sound, and then you'd listen to the sound, and it can become very like clinical based on something that's quite an academic way of learning. So that's another way to integrate it, and that's again another really useful thing about Anki is the way you can have it really interactive and quite an active process in learning. Flashcards in itself is an active active process learning, but having media and like videos and actually trying to make a diagnosis, like there's no other way of learning or like no other way of making flashcards that allows you to stretch it to that extent. That is the basic flashcard and the type of flashcards I make. I won't go over that again, but now I'll just kind of go through the different card types, and you can kind of think in your head of the different kinds of cards that I've spoken about earlier that you can add or you can make from the different card types. So one thing I just quickly forgot to mention earlier in regards to what you can add to the answers and questions. If I go to one of the cards I created earlier, which was this one, so I think I forgot to kind of clarify that you can have different kind of media formats within an answer or question. So how you can have text, you can have images. You don't just need to have one. You can have more than one image. So currently there's some text, a single image. I can go and screenshot another image like this. Obviously this is just a random example, and then just click enter, and now the other image is in here. So now if I scroll down, so you can add like unlimited amounts of images and media formats all within the same answer. So you can really make creating your flashcards quicker with all these images, and make them more effective instead of just having plain text. A good example I have of using multiple images and stuff is this one in terms of gastric cancer. If I just preview the card, it was summarize the stages of H. pylori infection leading to gastric cancer, and so I have a bit of text and then images to kind of explain what's going on, and then a bit more text and then more images relating to that text, so it all makes sense. And the possibilities are endless in terms of how detailed you make your cards and what kind of information you can put in there in different kinds of formats. So I'll go on to reverse cards now. So if we go back to the add window and just change it to basic and reverse cards, click choose, and it would seem like nothing has changed. That's because the way reverse cards work, what they essentially are is, so you have a front and a back traditionally, where the front is the question and the back is the answer. When you create a card like this, so you'll have question 3 and then answer 3. You'll have this, and you add it to whatever deck and tags. When you create a reversed card as well, it will switch it around, so then this becomes the front and that becomes the back. So if I click add, and I'll just go to the browse menu, click add today, and you see how I only entered one card, but it's actually made 2 cards from this one card, or 2 cards from one note. Now if I preview this, so this was the first way round, the normal front question and then back answer. However, the next card it created from that initial note was is now reversed. And now I don't really use this. I haven't really found much use of it in medicine, just because I like to phrase my reverse questions like differently. So I just create an entirely new card with a basic card. So like an example for that would be like, what's the lifespan of a platelet, and it's like 8 to 10 days or something in circulation. And then the reverse of that would be like, which cell in circulation has an 8 to 9 or 8 to 10 day lifespan. With this, it only literally takes the answer, the front and back, and literally just reverses it 1 to 1. You can't really change the question with it. So while not very useful for medicine, well, in my experience, it could be good. Like I think I mentioned earlier that Anki was kind of initially designed to learn languages. I think that's true. So don't hold me to that. But that's why. So with a reverse card, say if you had like, it would be really good for vocab. Say like for your younger sibling doing GCSEs or A levels, trying to memorize all their vocab lists. So say if you had, say if you're doing Spanish and you had fire, and that's fuego, and then click add. And because it was a basic reverse card, now it's got 2. So if I preview this, it's fire, fuego, fuego, fire, and it's on the same deck. So you'd have the context of like, oh, you're revising Spanish or whatever. So that's the only real kind of like use I see of reverse cards. I don't really use them, but that's there. Okay, so if we look at the Cloze deletion cards now, so if I just go to the basic Cloze deletion and stuff, that basically just refers to blocking out a certain part of like a sentence, or blocking out a single option in a list, and then trying to figure out what that option that's being blocked out is. I won't really go into much detail with this, since I don't really use them. I don't have a single Cloze deletion cards, and I don't really know how to manipulate them properly. But I do know quite a few people do use these. The reason I don't really use Cloze deletions, because they are very useful, is because I basically do the exact same thing in what Cloze deletion does, except I use Image Occlusion, which I'll get to later, and I find it easier and it looks better, and there are more options you can do with that as well. Yeah, in the end, Cloze deletions allow for context-based learning by blocking out particular words from a sentence or a list, or like an order or something. So I'll just kind of quickly show you how it works. So you initially, select the Cloze card, and I'll go into overlapping Cloze in a moment. Let's say let's add a sentence or something. So the mitochondrion is the power. Okay, so we have this sentence, and now say we want to cut out this, so then we'd have the mitochondrion is the ... of the cell, and we'd have to think what the answer is. So if I just get rid of that, and instead I click this Cloze deletion sign, and then just after the 2 colons, just paste that in there, and now you'll have this. And it looks a bit funny because it's like I said, it's a very raw program, so it has a lot of the scripting within the actual flashcard when you create it. And if you click add, and let's just go to our card here. So here's our card, and if we click preview, that's what it looks like. The mitochondrion is the ... of the cell, and then it will come out with powerhouse. And now I'm sure you can see that this would be very useful. And I would use Cloze deletion, apart from the fact that I use Image Occlusion to do the exact same thing, and I'll get on to how I do that later. The other option with Cloze deletion is Cloze overlapping. So this is better for lists and orders. So if I choose this, it will look a bit more complicated. However, let's say I add some text. So let's start off with the first few things of the Krebs cycle. Oxaloacetate, and then it goes on to citrate, and then isocitrate, and then alpha keto glutarate. I think that's correct. And yeah, so then if we just add in the text T, I think this is how you use it. I've never actually used this before. So oxaloacetate citrate alpha isocitrate and then alpha keto glutamate. And now if we just quickly make these into closes here. Like that. Okay, and now if we just click add, it'll say it added, you know, four cards with overlapping information. So now if we just click on the first one and click preview, we can see what's happening. So the first one isn't there. It might be good. It will probably be a good idea to add a title. So, you know, first 4 molecules of the TCA cycle. Cool. Okay, and I've just added that in, so that'll be the title. And if I click preview now, okay, now it makes more sense. So yeah, oxaloacetate, and then, you know, and now we know the first step, and now it's like, you know, trying to get onto the next one, citrate, and then you see how it blocks out the first one. So now I only have like a small kind of context to see what's going on. And then alpha ketoglutarate, and then, you know, all 4 of them in one go. So it adds all of that, and you can see how that would be quite useful to do, especially if they come up randomly, because you can select flashcards to come up randomly. Again, that was a very kind of wishy-washy tutorial on how to use close deletion. I'm sure there are plenty of other tutorials that actually show you how to use close deletion properly. I just never really use it, but, you know, I thought I'd just kind of give a brief rundown on it. So now we're going to go on to the image occlusion card types, and image occlusion isn't a default card type within Anki. It is an add-on. Anki is very open source, so you can make your own add-ons for Anki and whatnot. So you are going to have to download and install that. So the way you go about doing that is if you just Google image occlusion enhanced, it will come up with this web page. Will probably be the first link. This is basically what it is. It's kind of image occlusion forms like the image occlusion and basic card types form the basis of all of my flashcards, basically. And you can read through this and whatnot, but what you just need to get to is this code here, the download code. So what you do is you just copy that code, you go back to Anki, click on tools, go to add-ons, and then browse and install, and then you just paste in the code there, click OK and follow the instructions, and you might have to restart Anki. I won't do it since I already have it installed. Once you do restart Anki, you should have image occlusion enhanced options, which is just some of the default settings, such as like colors for the different masks, but you don't really ever have to use that. But now if you go back onto add and you click on the card type, you will have image occlusion enhanced. You might find the option for image occlusion 2.0 when you're searching for it on Google. Leave that one, go for enhanced, which is the more updated version and much more stable and easier to use. So once you have that installed, you can click on the image occlusion enhanced card type and it'll come up with all of this. You don't actually need to do that. You don't actually need to click on the specific card type to create image occlusion cards. You can stay on the basic card type, or actually any card type, in fact, because you'll get this extra button here, which is add image occlusion. You know, you can just use the shortcut, and you add all of the options in a separate window. So you won't actually create the card in this window that you usually see here. It will open up a separate window with the image, and then you do everything there and create everything there, and then it will just add the cards. What you can do is you just click on this button, or just click whatever shortcut comes up, and then you'll go around and find the image that you're looking for. You can select the image file if you have it downloaded, but usually the easier way is just to you know, copy an image onto your clipboard and then go from there. So I have this image here. What I'll do is I'll use the same shortcut that I used before. So hold down Windows, Shift, and then S. Create like a selection screenshot of your screen, and it was Command Alt Shift for Mac, I believe. I've copied that, it's on my clipboard. So if I go back and just click on this, you'll see it brings up this window. So if I just zoom in a bit, and now here is like where you add your label. So image occlusion, it lets you block off parts of an image, and then it will like block it off, and then and you're basically just going to try and answer what is being blocked off. So here's your rectangle tool. Obviously there are different shape tools and drawing tools for funny different kind of things you want to block off. It fits a different kind of label. This is just general anatomy, so it should be just fine with rectangles. I'll just change the color to black for now. And what you do, you just go through and just block off each label. So I'll just go through and do this. Okay, so I've blocked all of them off, and that's basically it. So now, however many blocks there are, 1, 2, 3, okay, 11. So there are 11 blocks, and now it's going to create 11 flashcards. And the way to actually create the cards from this is down here. So there are 3 different options: hide all, reveal one, hide all, reveal all, and hide one, reveal all. So the basic one, say for like anatomy pictures, is going to be hide all, reveal one, and it does what it says. It will hide all of the cards, so they will all be blacked out except one, which would be a different color, and it will ask you just to answer that one that's being colored. So if I click on that, you'll see it says 11 cards have been added. So if I close that and just close this, go on to browse, added today, and I go into here and I'll just click preview. You see how all of these are blocked out except one, which is asking me to answer. Then I can think about what it is and then answer it accordingly and go through, and it's fairly self-explanatory. Say if you answer one of them and say if you got it mixed up, say if you got it wrong, you're like, oh, or you're just out of curiosity, you're like, oh, I forgot this one, what one's this? At the bottom you'll see toggle masks. If you click that, it will just open them all, even though that wasn't the specific question. But if you ever just want to see them all, then go next and answer it. And if you want to see all of them or look at a specific one, you can just click that. And that's basically the basis of image occlusion. There are a few other options. So when say if you want to change the image, you can. So if you just click on any of these cards and say if you want to edit this around, just click on it and then click on this little red image occlusion button here, and it will bring up the same window with everything here. And now you can go through and edit any of these. Say if you want to delete that one and delete that one. Now if you click edit cards, it will say it will delete 2 cards and create 0 new ones. Click yes, and now you see it's deleted the last 2 ones. So if I preview the cards now, you see those last 2 that I deleted aren't blocked, and it was all edited within the original kind of thing I created. So if I go back and edit, so I'll quickly just add these 2 blocks here. Undo that. I'll just make it just for consistency. Just add those 2 there again, and if I select this one and this one, just delete them. You'll see that right vagus nerve and left vagus nerve, I mean they're related to each other. So what if you want to group them? So if I just select that and just cover them up again, if you go to the selection tool, you can click on that one and then hold down shift and click on the other. Now you'll see the 2 are selected, and if you just click G to group, you can see these are now grouped. And what that allows you to do is now they will come up together. So now if I click edit cards and then just click yes, if I click preview and I just go through there, now you see how these 2 come up together, and it's asking for both of them, and that's the right, that's the left, and then it will show both of them together. So now you can also group cards, and you can make multiple groupings. So if you want to group this one, and this one, you can group those, and then say if you want to group these as well, click edit. If I preview them, you see how those 2 come together, those come together, those come together. So you can group related ones together if you want to as well. And it might not work so well with anatomy pictures, but I'll go on to different card types where grouping really does come in handy. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll quickly just delete all of those cards, and I will just go back to the add menu, just copy and paste this again. So copy, and then I'll just go back into image occlusion. So I'm starting from scratch, just make this black again. I'll go through these other options here. So say if I select these again,
Okay, so now they're all blocked off again. And now instead of hide all, reveal one, so it made sense. It hid all of them, except, and it asked you to answer one of them, so it was only going to reveal one of them. Hide all, reveal all does again what it says. It will hide all of them, or all of them will be hidden, and then it will ask you to answer all of them in one go. Okay, so let's say these are all separated, and I click hide all, reveal one again. So just kind of starting back to it's kind of going back to where we started off from, and it's going like how you'd expect. Say later on, if I go back into edit them, you want to say you're really comfortable with them now, and you don't want to answer them individually. You want them to come up all together, all as one, and you have to try and do all of them all in one go. If you click on the select tool and just click all of them, or select all of them and click group, so now these are all one big group, and then you click edit cards, you see it will delete all of them and just create one new one. If you click proceed, you'll see there's only one card here now, and it's like all in one go. So you see how easy it is to change the card type. So initially you would have started off like this, where you're doing one at a time, and then later on, as you've repeated all of them a few times, you want to be able to do it all in one go. So then it's quite easy to change in that sense. If I just quickly delete them all, and I'll just go back to square one, just copy this again, and I'll just open up Image Occlusion, and again just block some of them off. I won't do all of them. Okay, so now you're probably wondering what hide one, reveal all is. This is the other option I use, and it doesn't apply so much to anatomy pictures. I use them more for cycles, orders, and tables and whatnot, and I'll show you examples of them later. But again, so what it does, it only hides one of them, and you can see the rest. So you see how all of these are blocked, and if I clicked hide all, reveal one, all of them would remain blocked, and one of them would be colored to reveal that one. However, if I click hide one, reveal all, you'll see it's added 5 cards, just because I only blocked 5 in that case. If I click preview now, despite me blocking all of them down here, only one of them is being blocked and being asked to reveal, so you can see everything. And now you see this is very similar to closed deletions or overlapping closed deletions that I showed you earlier, except this time you can use it in the context of a picture as well, and you can also use it in the context of text, which I'll show you later. But you see how it's a lot easier to create, it's a lot simpler. It's just a matter of a few clicks and making a few rectangles. And this is essentially what hide one, reveal all is, where only one is being hidden and asked to answer, and the rest is still revealed, despite you actually blocking all of them earlier. Like, so if I go and you can see all of them were blocked, but only one's being shown and blocked at a time. Okay, and just to quickly help you organize this, you see currently if I just close this down, you see there's no title and you can't really search for the card. You always want to be able to search for your cards. So if you just go back in and edit, and you don't have to do this in the edit mode, you can create it in the first place. What you can do is you add a header. Your header is your title. So I'll just say anatomy of veins in neck. And then footer is a note that will be at the bottom of every single card. So a header is at the top of every card, so a title. Footer is like a footnote at the end of every single card. So if I click edit cards just like that, it says 5 old cards just edited in place. So I just added something. And now if I click preview, well, you see how the header has now become the search option. So if I click preview, it now says anatomy of veins in neck, or anatomy. Okay. So now I have some context as to what's going on, or like what I'm kind of looking at initially. And now I can search for that card by this. So if I want to type in veins neck, if I ever need to search for it, it comes up with the ones that relate to that. So if I just go in and edit these further, and I go into fields, and for the footer I add anything. I can't really think of anything right now. Click edit cards, the cards are edited in place. And now if I click preview, you see at the bottom there's a footer at every single one. Just, it might be a contextual tip for what you're looking at or something. But yeah, that will come up at the bottom of every card, even on the question side. If you go back in again into fields, remarks are something that will come at the bottom of the card, but it will only come up on the answer side. So this can be an extra detail to the answer, maybe like an acronym to help remember the different veins or something for that picture. But let's just say you add a remark there. Click edit cards, and obviously it's added them or edited them in place. If I click preview again, so you've got the header, you've got the one being blocked off, you've got your little footer. Now in your remarks, you got this. So say if there's something to help you remember that particular vein or branch or whatever, you can add that extra information in there. So that's really quite useful. And there are a few other things, sources, like if you got it from a particular website, you can add that there. And that's essentially how you create image occlusion cards, and how you edit them and how you can edit them very easily in place. You can actually go through and edit or change the image. Say if you found a better image, you could go through, find that better image, and then just copy it again. And if you just click change image, it will just replace it. The masks will stay in place, and then obviously that doesn't really make sense. I've just added a different picture, but it shows you can easily change the image as well if you find later on there's a better image that you want to use. If I just close that just to cancel it, if I go back if you go into remarks here, again, it doesn't just have to be text. I could add this as my remark, like that. So if I click preview now, it will have that. It has the title up there. It has the footer there as well. And it will have my remarks here, even with the image. So you realize how much context and information you can have to, always supplement your cards. So the possibilities are endless in terms of how you use it. And yeah, again, adding all of the titles and remarks don't have to be done in the edit mode. If you take a picture for the first time and you go back and say if you click on image occlusion, so you're using this card for the first time. I'm a bit zoomed in. Make a few blocks and whatnot. And then instead of clicking hide, like to create the card straight away, just go into the fields, add your title, maybe the remarks for them, and maybe a footer if you want to. And then if you click hide or reveal one or whatever, it adds the cards. If I go back onto added today, it has all of them, with the remarks all in place straight away down there and everything. So again, very easy to create. Basically does the same as Cloze deletion, except in a more visual way and an easier way to use. And now what I'm going to do is just go through some examples of previous cards that I've created from my first year and some from this year so far, and show you the types of cards that I've made. And I haven't just used them for anatomy, I've used them for all kinds of cards. A lot of my cards are image occlusion cards. Okay, so my first example are cycles and pathways. That's a common one I use it for. So I used it for the TCA cycle. If I just preview this, you can see how I use a hide one, reveal all format for this. So I recommend using hide one, reveal all for cycles and pathways because it gives you context. I can see, oh, okay, so what's coming after this molecule here and what came before it and what's being added. So it lets me see the context of it and then, kind of work it out. If I had them all blocked out and it was hide all, reveal one, then all I would be remembering is the positional relation of this, like what molecule is at this position, what molecule is at that position, if I can't see everything. This way I can see what comes before, what comes after, and then, work it out that way. And then, you can go across and you see how it works that way. And it's quite useful to use that. So I made the example of the Cloze deletion card here of the first 4 molecules in the TCA cycle. And whilst this is good, you see in the example that I used here, the exact same thing, except I've got all of them, obviously. But now I have the full cycle in an image. It's a lot more visual, it's a lot easier to learn, there's a lot more context to it. So yeah, this is why I use image occlusion over Cloze deletion. And again, you can group multiple cards if you want to, so it doesn't have to be individual. Maybe you could group this and the following enzyme if you want to. So again, possibilities are endless. And then what you can do is, say you've done all these individual cards for the TCA cycle multiple times, and you're quite comfortable with it now, you're quite used to it. You can go into one of them, edit it, and then if you select all of them and click group and then edit cards, and you see how we'll just get rid of them and just leave one of them. Here it is at the bottom, and now it's all of them in one go. And now you're just like, okay, now I've got to do all of them in one go. And you can do that maybe before exams, to like as you go nearer to exam, to see if you remember the whole thing in one go. And yeah, so it's very easy to edit and manipulate like that. I do also have some other metabolism ones. So again, another flow chart going through, and I think at one point it's grouped. No, I don't think so. But yeah, you see how you can use it for multiple different types of cycles. See if I have any other ones. Electron transport chain, you see I've just blocked one off individually and see like what those enzymes are with those proteins. Initially I did start off the beginning of the year doing my own handwritten notes. So this is just an example of a basic card where it's a question and then the answer's right here. I just took a picture of my notes, and the reason I stopped doing notes is because my handwriting's a bit appalling. So here I used image occlusion with my own handmade notes. So you see like I've gone through and see what steps are required at each place, and again, a lot of context, a lot of putting things together and working things out in terms of being given a little bit of information, like you would be in an exam. They'd give you a bit of information, then ask you to work something out. Again, another example going through there. And now here are some other ones. So again, I mentioned I use tables. So this is a table. So this is an acronym, Socrates, for assessing pain. And I'd be like, so what is each letter, denoting in this case? And I'd go through and try and remember which one it is. And I think this is again similar to close deletion, but I think much better in the fact that there was some slides in anatomy, and it basically had a lot of information regarding it. So I kind of did it as a fill in the gaps. I went through and occluded the key details. So and then like close deletion, I'm asked to reveal a certain one. And then if I even do want to, I can click toggle masks and see all of it very easily, just if I do want to have a quick read, if I have some extra time. And then if I go next, you see how these ones are grouped because obviously they're all within the same point, and extend from this to that, and then see it, and you see how like this was very easy to create, even though there's a lot in these flashcards. All I did was use one image and then occluded it out, grouped to one or two boxes, and created it. And I created 8 flashcards just like that with a lot of information that was very good for contextual learning. So this is another example of doing that. The walls of the inguinal canal, going through what the different walls are. These ones were summary tables of specific gut hormones. So summary table of gastrin, and then different locations and everything. And you'll see on some of them I do have remarks, and look, this is a remark. So it was from a separate information sheet, and I added this remark in as an image. I didn't even have to type it up. This was for the stimuli for gastrin, and then it's got some extra information regarding that regarding stimuli for gastrin, and then yeah, again some more remarks regarding the pH. And I think I've got a few similar ones. So if I preview this one, what are the effects of somatostatin, and then more remarks regarding that. And again, I didn't even type any of this up. So again, very quick and easy to make very complex and very like information dense flashcards. So this is oxidation of CYP. This is a cycle again, oxidation by CYP. I mean, and again, so substrate binding. What does that mean? I've got remarks that kind of add a bit more context for it, so I can get information of what's actually happening in that step with the remarks. So obviously I'd try, because I know I've added a remark to that, I'd try and think of the whole process that's happening for that particular step, and then I'd see if I am correct according to the remark. And then again, a very good example for using remarks for that. Okay, so yeah, this is another example that I have in my current profile that I just didn't copy over to the example profile. And just quickly, an example of me using the search feature, I knew one of the keywords was nuclei. So I just searched for it, and I found my cards here. So I just want to show you this example as well. So arrangement of the nuclei of the cranial nerves within the brainstem, and I have added a footer here just for a bit of context regarding that. And obviously I'll go through and answer them, and you see some of them are grouped, the ones that are related. If I go further down, click preview, I took this off someone's notes, and I just kind of occluded the key information. However, you see in the remarks, I've got this image for a bit of context. So this is a more descriptive, like writing way of showing the different locations of the nuclei within the brainstem, and I've added a remark showing the actual image of it, so I get a bit more context and I can properly understand it. So this was another example which I thought I'd share, and again, it just shows why I use image occlusion over close deletion. And this is image occlusion is what essentially sold me for using Anki and properly dedicating towards it, because as you can see, there's an insane way, like insane amount of ways that you can use image occlusion just by itself. Just one more last example, I think, was this one. So cortical connections of the specific nuclei of the thalamus. So that's the nucleus, and then it's cortical connection, and then you'd think like, okay, what's the ventrolateral and ventral anterior cortical connection, and then it will show that connection. Then in the remarks of that, I added this image which shows the position of all the different thalamic nuclei, and I get more context on where everything is and how it's connecting. Initially, it might seem like it's very hard to create flashcards like this, but again, it's very easy if I just show you the actual editing of it. So it was just a table, put it in, occluded these out, and just selected that, went into the fields, added the header for the title, and then the remarks are the actual picture. So you can see the remarks here. If I go through each one, it's got the remarks for the thalami. In order to add images as remarks for image occlusion, you can't actually do it within the image occlusion enhanced editing mode in here. You can add text in here. However, to add images for your remarks, you actually have to go back outside and just add them individually for the cards here, like I have here. You just go in here and just paste the image into here. For some reason, you can't do it in the actual editing mode. I don't know why. You can just do it there. And it does work properly. So, yeah. And I think that's the last example. Obviously, there are lots of different examples. You might think of even better ways to use image occlusion, but this is the way that I've currently found that all of those examples I've showed you are the different types of cards that I've kind of created to basically justify why I use Anki, in terms of the fact that I can actually get all different types of information within Anki in a flashcard format. So yeah, the last card type that I want to talk about that I use, that I've only started using in my second year because it applies more, is the drug breakdown note type. This isn't a default one, and I don't think you can download it because I made this one myself. When I meant that Anki has a lot of versatility and it's very raw and you can do whatever you want if you know how to. Yeah, if you start going through this kind of stuff, you can do whatever you want. This took me a while, and it's something I've only started using, and I'm not going to go into it obviously, but this allows you to automate certain parts, because in year 2 we have a pharmacology module and there's a lot of drugs that are mentioned and a lot of details we need to know about the drugs. I decided to invest some time to make this template just to make making flashcards regarding certain drugs a lot easier. And what this effectively allows me to do is make multiple flashcards and put in certain information about a drug very quickly. So you put in a drug name, say spironolactone, and then type in the drug class, which is a mineralocorticoid receptor antagonist, and then all of the other stuff in. Don't have to mention all of the things, but yeah, and then after that's done, depending on how many options you filled out regarding for that drug, and you click let me just choose a deck to put this in. I'll put this into year 2. If I just click that and click add, it's added those cards. So if I click close and browse, I'll just go into added today. You'll see it says spironolactone since that's the main drug, so it's all the cards relating to spironolactone. And there's only four. One, two, three, four. Yeah, there's only four in because I only filled in 1, 2, 3, 4 sections. And if I go in and click preview, you see it says what is the class of spironolactone, and then that. What's the mechanism of that? Blah. What's a biological half-life? And that's because even though I never actually made those individual cards with that phrasing of the question, this template has it all kind of created within there to generate them all automatically like that. You can experiment around with creating that stuff if you need to. There are tutorials on how to get started with that kind of stuff. I mean, I don't really know much about it. I just kind of fiddled around, looked at one or two things and came around creating that. But the reason I put that there is although you won't have that template, I might be able to give out that template somehow later on. And once I've tweaked it to be like foolproof in terms of the way it works, there are 1 or 2 errors I've seen. You could use that as well if you're in second year, if you need to adjust it for something else that you might want. And just to give an example, so you see here I have my drug breakdown cards. These are all the card types, the note types. So if I click drug breakdown, you can see ones that I've created and stuff. So if you look at pilocarpine or pilocarpine, you see I've actually filled it in properly. It didn't take me very long. You can find drug tables where it's got the table and then got all the information for the physiologic effects, side effects, clinical uses, and then it creates the cards very quickly like that. So again, so although I invested quite a bit of time initially, it saves me a lot of time in creating cards where I can just add in all the information quite quickly and get the relevant card types. And if I need to add something or adjust something, say if I want to add another physiological effect, if I do that, and then you see how there are multiple cards, if I go through all of them, you see it's actually added it there for all of them. But I will just undo that. So it's gone. And that's the last. So those are pretty much all the card types I use. So the main ones are basic, which is most of my cards. Then the next most is image occlusion. Those are the 2 that I actually only really use. And then drug breakdown is another one that I've started recently using this year because of the pharmacology module. And yeah, those are all the card types, note types, and different card examples for each kind of note type and how you can use it to create your own, really. So hopefully that was the kind of basis of this tutorial, how to make the cards, really. And now I'll go into organization and actually studying your cards and workflows. So I'll go into that now. So yeah, I'm just going to quickly talk about tagging now and how to tag your cards and how I do it and why you should do it as well. So it kind of comes down to organization of all your flashcards and all your decks. I'm not sure if I mentioned earlier near the beginning that it's usually better when you have your decks and sub-decks to have as few as possible. That's why I only have an LCRS one and an MCD sub-deck within my year 2 deck, within my year 2 master deck. And the reason for that is because of the way Anki randomizes things and the way its algorithms work. It works a lot better and efficiently when you just have fewer decks in total. So I have these overall module ones. So for my year 1 one, I had LCRS, LSS1, LSS2, and MCD. Those were the main modules we had. You can kind of ignore the anatomy decks. They're just something separate I had in regards to anatomy. So yeah, and then within that, obviously within MCD, you have different different topics like metabolism or NAGE. And then within those topics, you have multiple lectures, and then you'll be like, oh, how do I organize that without having a separate deck for each one? Well, the way it works is through tags. So, when you add a card, if I just change it to the basic one, you just add tags at the bottom, so relating to the lecture. And then later on, when I talk about filtered decks and custom decks, it'll make a lot more sense as to why you would tag and the flexibility it gives you. So I'll just show you some examples of tagging that I've done. If I go on LCRS for this here, and I'll just scroll down a bit. So yeah, if I show you here, you can see the tags over here, and you can also see them at the bottom. You will see that they come in chunks because I tend to have the same tag for a single lecture. So I start off big and I go down to small. So I have the year 2 tag, which is obviously for year 2. Then I have LCRS, and then within LCRS we have 2 exams. So this is in the LCRS 2 exam, and then this is the neuro section within LCRS 2, and then I have the actual lecture name here as well. Each individual tag that has a space in between is a separate tag, and then the reason I've got dashes here is because it counts it as one big tag that way. So I usually put the name of the lecture with dashes in it, so it's like one single tag. And then on the side you'll end up having all of your tags here. So say if you want to find, so if I have my lecture on neurohypophysial disorders, this was here. So yeah, these are all the flashcards I have from that lecture. If you wanted to find just your LCRS1 tags or flashcards, you can just click on that and all of your LCRS1s are here. And that's the way I organize them. So initially it might seem I don't really have much organization with just all of my LCRS cards in a single deck, which is quite a lot. You're like, how do I pick and choose if I want to do a certain topic? Well, because I have all of these tags for each lecture specifically, I can pick out those kind of tags and choose which tags to study. I can either choose a single tag or you choose multiple tags, and I can choose to study those individually using custom and filtered decks, which I'll go into a bit more detail when I show how to actually study your flashcards, because I've shown you how to create them and how to organize them, but I haven't actually shown you how to study your flashcards. So when I go over to that section, then I'll talk about creating custom decks to kind of fine-tune what you're actually learning with your flashcards. So, studying your cards. Now that you've learned how to create them and organize them to a certain extent, tag them and whatnot, how are you actually meant to study your flashcards? So the way you basically do that is you just click on the deck that you want to study, and that's about it, and then you just start studying them. So here you can see I have 18 new cards in this default deck, and if I click on that, it says, so got new 18 new cards, learning cards is 0, and to review cards is also 0 right now. I'll explain what learning and review cards are in a bit, but obviously new cards are just cards that you've, say, recently created. You've never seen them before, ever. They're brand new cards. So I've got 18 new cards to study. So if I click study now, it will start coming up. So these were just some of the random ones I created earlier. Question 3, if I show the answer, just click enter or click show answer at the bottom, then it comes up with the answer. Now here's the key for Anki and how it works. You have the ratings of difficulty at the bottom. So if you found it hard or you just didn't get the question or you just had no idea, you click again and it'll come up quite quickly, so within 1 minute. If you found it decent and you got the answer with relative ease, then you'd click good. That'd be the middle option, and this is showing that it would come within 10 minutes. If you found it really easy, it was like you didn't even have to think about it, then you can click easy and it'll come back up in 4 days. And you can change these options here initially. So these initial options that come up when you see a new card, you can change those. I'll come back to that in a bit. Let's say I found this card really easy and I'll just click easy. So that card is now going to come up in 4 days time. And yeah, so I won't see that card until then. And if I get it then I'll choose my options when I review it again. So with this one, again, I'll just click show answer. And that was fairly easy. And say, for example, I didn't understand or I didn't get this one. I'll just click, say if I had no idea, I'd click 1 minute and it would come up then. This is another card. Mitochondrion is the powerhouse of the cell. So, what was it? That was all right. It was fairly good, so I'll click good. And you see how you're rating each card in that sense. And if you want to quit studying, you just click decks at the top, and now you see this has changed a bit. Obviously the new cards have gone down because I've seen some of them, but you see the due cards have now increased. So if I just click on this again, you see the new cards are 15 because obviously I've studied some of them. The learning is now 3 and to review is 0 still. Learning cards are cards that you initially saw today and you're repeating today again. So the one where I clicked 1 minute, obviously that card is going to come up in 1 minute, so I'm going to see that again. I'm in the process of learning that card. cards that are going to come up in the future, they are review cards. So in 4 days time, that card which I initially clicked to come up in 4 days, in 4 days time that card is going to come up again. That's not going to be a new card because I've already seen it. It's not going to be a learning card. That's going to be a review card. So it will make more sense. Say if I just switch profile to my normal profile, you see I have quite a lot of review cards. So say if I click on this, see I have 8 review cards. So these are cards that I've seen a while ago and they're due to be studied again today. So I'm just going to quickly go back to the other profile. Okay, so when you do study cards, well, so you see this card came up again, so within a minute, and now I can choose the options. Say if I select 10 minutes, and now this is another new card. You can see the card type that's being given to you. So this is a new card since it's underlined. Answer 3 is question 3. So yeah, I'll just select 4 days for that. And that's essentially how you go through and study your cards. Anki works better the more honest you are with how you rate your cards. If you do genuinely if you did actually have no idea, select the first option. If you found it really easy, then do select the last option. But if the more honest you are, the more better it's going to work for you. So say if I select 4 days for this, that card, when I see it in 4 days, it's not going to have the same options. You see how currently the options are 1 minute, 10 minutes, then 4 days. When I see that card in 4 days again, it's not going to say 1 minute, 10 minutes, and 4 days, because then it is going to be maybe, it might have the 1 minute option, say if I completely forgot it at that time again, but then it will also say 2 days, 6 days. So then each time is going to get longer and longer. The more better I do get at remembering it, the more easier I find it. So just to kind of illustrate that, if I just go back to my main profile, if I click on this LCRS one and I click study now, so how's the logarithmic dose response curve different between full and partial agonists? If I click show answer, it's got the answer here. And you see for me, I've got this 10 minutes again. Say if I completely forgot it and I had no idea, I'd click 10 minutes. So it would come up again and it'd kind of reset the time and it'd come up quite frequently and then eventually come up at longer intervals. But because I've seen this card a few times and I found it quite easy, you see how even my hard selection is at 1.1 months and good is at 2.2 and easy at 2.9. Eventually your cards will end up having those kind of intervals with them, and at first it might seem like, oh my god, I'm not going to see this card for like 3 months. What if I forget it in that time, and what if that's after the exam and stuff? Obviously you'll kind of realize that you will actually remember it in that kind of time if you've been honest with your initial answers, initial ratings of difficulties. I guess there's a matter of trust within the program. That's why I said I took a gamble when I just kind of decided to dedicate my time to Anki, since I'd never used it before I started first year. I can assure you it can work, and you'll probably start realizing as you do use it more and more that, wow, you do actually remember things after quite a while, say after a month, even though you haven't seen it. So, and obviously, when the more honest you are with the ratings, the things you do frequently find difficult to recall, they will come up more frequently. And the things that you find easier to recall, they will come up less frequently as you will be selecting the longer time intervals. Okay, and just quickly, there are 3 other functions that you can do while studying. So say if I'm studying a card and I click study, there are more options in the corner. So there's the main that I use are burying cards, marking cards, and suspending cards. And I'll just quickly get into those in a moment. You also have in this corner edit. So say if you looked at the answer and you were like, oh wait, there's actually a mistake here. Mistakes always happen. You can just go in and just make the according adjustment straight away, and then just click enter, and then it would apply the edit straight away. If I just undo that and just leave that, because I don't want to make any changes to that. So yeah, in terms of burying, marking, and suspending, what burying means that, say if you have this card come up and you're like, actually I don't want to study this card right now, or say if it's related to another card that makes this card too easy, so it's giving you you're obviously going to select the easy option, even though if you saw this card without seeing the other card before it might have been more difficult. Then you want to bury the card. What that does, it will kind of just hide that card up until the end of your study session or up until tomorrow or your next study session. So that what burying the card does. And if you suspend the card, that will just basically pause the card. You won't see that card again until you unsuspend it. So that's what I've done to all of my first G cards, because obviously I don't want to be seeing them all the time. So I've just suspended them. So they're just there, because you don't want to delete all of that hard work. So they're there, but they're just suspended, so I never see them. And marking cards or marking notes, what that does, it just kind of adds. So if I just show you, if I go into browse and I go to marked cards, you'll see all of them have the marked tag on them. So when you click that mark option when you're studying a card, it will add the tag marked and it will automatically add it to this marked section in your browser. And what it does, all of your marked cards come out purple. So even if you are on, say, your normal deck somewhere, oh, you see that little flash of purple, so you can see your marked cards straight away, but all of them are organized in here as well. And the reason you might mark a card is, say if I found a mistake somewhere and I want to go back to it later, it's just a good way to go back to a card, later on. Say if I'm actually studying a card on my phone whilst I'm on the tube or something, and then I realised there was a mistake somewhere, I can't be bothered to edit it on my phone. It's quite fiddly. So I just mark it, and then, when I'm back home, doing editing cards and whatnot, I can go into my marked section and edit things accordingly if I do need to. The main reason I mark cards is if there's a mistake or I need to edit something, or if there's something that I found particularly, like, sometimes when you're creating cards, you don't realize that it's actually really, with the concept that you just made a flashcard on was really weird, or you realize that it just didn't make any sense or something, or there is a mistake. Then I just mark it, and then, I can go back to a lecturer at some point, talk to the lecturer about a specific card that was from their lecture, and see, like, oh, I found this part difficult or something, or did this part didn't make sense, or like what's the actual reasoning behind this. Say if I just didn't pick up that kind of uncertainty when I was initially making the card. So those are a few other options you can use while studying cards, just to organize things whilst you are studying, and make things easier to come back to if you noticed something. Okay, so now I'm just going to go through some of the global settings and, like, individual deck settings that kind of allow you to customize how cards come up and what frequency they come up at, and that kind of stuff. So I'll start off with the global settings. So if you go into tools and then go into preferences, in this there's basically one setting that you really have to look at, maybe two. Most of it's fairly self-explanatory, like these two and whatnot. That's personal preference, and so is this one. I'd recommend just leaving this one to when adding default to current deck. However, this one is up to you and what you prefer. So you can, when you're actually studying, you can either have new cards and review cards come up with each other. So you might get a review card, might get another review card, then you might get a new card, then you might get another review card, then you might get two new cards. So yeah, it comes up randomly. So it will mix how new cards and reviews come up. Or you can have all the new cards come up after you've done your reviews, or you can have all your new cards come up before your reviews. For me, I like to have things mixed. I like to have things random, so I usually leave it at that. For you, you might prefer other ones. This option doesn't apply too much to me because I actually use custom filtered decks, again, which I'll get onto later. But yeah, it's an option there if you're just going to be studying. So like normally, so if I just close this, you see how here I have two, like, new cards, or 30 new cards, and then 2 learning cards and zero reviews. Sorry, I can't speak. Learning cards count as reviews, basically, in terms of that setting that I was showing earlier. So you can have all of your learning and review cards to come up before your new cards, or all of them to come up, or all of the new cards to come up before, or have them to come up together. It's quite self-explanatory. It's up to you how you have that. If I go back into preferences, next day starts at, however many hours past midnight. Mine is 4 a.m. basically. So basically, if I go back to this, these stats are gonna, obviously as I study, say, my default deck, these stats are gonna go down to 0. I'm gonna have 0 due cards and 0 new cards left to do for today. That's obviously going to go down to 0 whenever that's complete, and then that's not going to reset until that that option here, until 4 a.m. for me. That's when your next day starts. That's when it's going to show you what's due for that day. The reason I did that is because, you know, sometimes I have those late night studying sessions, so I'm just banging out cards. I don't want it to suddenly reset how many cards I have to do. But, you know, I'd usually be done and dusted by 4 a.m. That's your own option. Learn ahead, I won't really get into. I've never really used it. It is an option that's somewhat useful sometimes. But yeah, you can just kind of Google that, you know, read the Anki manual if you want to learn more about that. Network, again, there's not really much. It's up to you. I'd recommend synchronizing everything. Backups, again, always recommend having backups. I've got nothing against them. So those are like the global settings. Not really much there. Now, when you get into the actual deck settings, so say for the default deck or this example deck, if I click on that and then just click options, now you'll have option groups, so you can have multiple for different types for each deck. I'll just show you if I just go back into my normal profile. If I show you here and I click options, you see I have quite a lot of option groups. So all of these have slightly different settings depending on which deck it's on. And the reason I did that is so I have fine control over each individual deck. So yeah, if I just quickly go on this, and the way you add a new option, if you do want to have a separate option for each deck, you just click on this, click on add, and then I usually name it to the name of the deck. So this deck is called example, so I'll call it that. And now these are the default settings. I'm assuming I haven't really changed anything on this profile. And now I'll slowly go through each one. Steps in minutes. This is what you get when you see a new card. If I just click OK for now and I just study this, you see when I study a new card, it comes up with 1 minute, 10 minutes, 4 days. So steps in minutes, that is regarding these first two options when you first see a new card. You can change that, so you see how it was 1 minute, 10 minutes, and then 4 days here. So for me, when I first see a new card, I find 1 minute too quick, so I changed it to 2 minutes and 10 minutes. So if I had no idea, I'd have it come up in 2 minutes, and then, you know, if I found it all right, it'll come up. If I found it all right for the first time, it will come up in 10 minutes. And then my easy interval, say if I found a card very easy, by default it would come up in 4 days. I personally have that at 2 days, just because I found 4 days too long. Like I find that I'd forget it in 4 days and then I'd have to just repeat it. But 2 days was a good interval for me. Again, experiment around with what works for you. Think about how good your memory is or something and see what works for you. Order, and okay, so now if I just click OK and study now, and I click show answer, you see how now it's 2 minutes, 10 minutes, and 2 days according to the settings I've just changed. So that's how that works. Now if I just go back in here, order, so show, this is quite self-explanatory, show new cards in order added, show new cards in random order. I usually have it in a random order. Very related cards until the next day. Now what this does, this can be quite useful, or you might not like it. It depends. So related cards are, so I should have probably explained this earlier, but basically the difference between a note and a card is quite subtle. So say if I click add, and say if I add an image occlusion card type. Okay, so say if I added an image occlusion card type, zoomed in a lot, and from this I create, this is a single note. So what I'm creating is a note, and from that note it created multiple cards. It created 5 cards. So, you know, when I just clicked add, the first time I created it, it said 5 cards added. So I've got 5 cards here, which can be seen like this. So I've got five flashcards from one single note. Okay, and related cards that were in this option here, bury related cards until the next day. That relates to, so related cards are flashcards that are made from a single note. So these 5 cards here that I've selected are related cards because they're all made from the same master note, if that makes sense. And the reason that's a useful option is because say if you've added these 5 cards. And if you get all of these 5 cards, you know, right next to each other, or if you have it all randomized, then, you know, you might get them all within the same day. But that might give you an unfair, not an unfair advantage, but, you know, it might skew how easy you find things. Because say if I look at this, and because I've seen everything else and I wonder what that one is, and okay, whatever that difficulty is, and then the next card is that one. It's a related card. I've already seen that. I'm obviously going to find it easier because I've just seen it. So that option, what it does is it will bury the card. So it won't show you any related cards. So cards made from the same note. It won't show you them until the next day. So you will only see, I will only see one of these 5 cards in a single day, at least when seeing them for the first time, when they're new cards. And that's that. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, you probably won't even realize too much what's going on. But yeah, I usually have it turned off because I usually have everything randomized. So yeah, it's up to you. Now let's go into other options. That's that first page. This is all relating to new cards. If we go on to review cards, oh yeah, I missed quite an important option actually on the new cards. New cards per day, so maximum new cards per day. Right now it's set to 20, that's the default. Obviously you can set it to, like, you know, say 50 new cards and click OK. And now, you know, that's changed to 50. Obviously, if you set it to just, you know, maxed out, I've only got 121 new cards anyway, so it will only show me that much. But yeah, this is just dependent on your workflow and like your workload, I mean, and how many cards you need to do to make sure you finish all of them before the exam, like all your new cards, and then how many reviews you have per day. So that's something for you to work out. I usually end up doing, if I'm actually doing things every day and doing them properly, I usually do about 30 to 50 max new cards a day, probably around 30 new cards a day. But then it also depends because, like I mentioned earlier, on my normal profile, if I look at my options, you see I have different options for each deck. That's because for each deck, I have a different amount of new cards that come up, because obviously sometimes I have to prioritize, like say MCD. If I have the MCD exam first, I'm going to prioritize that obviously before the other modules. And then that's going to depend on how many new cards I get per deck and per module in my case. So yeah, that's something you're just going to have to figure out on your own, seeing how many cards you have, how many new cards, how many due cards, and yeah. Okay, and then reviews, it's a similar thing. Reviews per day, maximum reviews per day. Again, that's something for you to kind of figure out for yourself, what your workload's like, and how many you can handle and how long it takes you. I do, when actually studying, I do recommend to prioritize reviews over new cards, but it depends. If you're coming close to exam and you still have loads of new cards, then it might be a good idea to do your new cards beforehand to make sure you've at least seen everything at least once or twice before the exam, so you've at least got it in your short-term memory, if not your long-term memory. However, if you're just doing your daily revision, because Anki is the kind of thing which you want to do daily, half an hour daily, and that's the best way it works. In that half an hour, it's usually better to prioritize your reviews, because you want those time intervals to not like get clogged up. Your new cards, obviously, you can do whenever. They're just going to be new until you first see them. So that's how I do it. Obviously, that's up to you to decide and what works for you. These options I don't really mess with. I've never really messed with them. It's just the maximum reviews a day is what I've messed with, and that's what you just got to find out in your own. This doesn't really matter too much. Lapses, what that means is when you... Just go back to here, just for sake of examples. That makes sense. So I've gone through this card. This, because I've seen this quite a few times, my lapse option, I've had a lapse, memory lapse. I go back to right to the beginning. That lapse period, that lapse option is 10 minutes for me. And that's basically what that option is showing you. So if I go into here, lapses, 10 minutes. That's the default. I've kept it at that. It doesn't really matter too much to me. I don't, thankfully, have too many lapses. So yeah, And then leech action. So say if you lapse a card 8 times in a row, then it will suspend the card, or you can have it to tag only. Again, I've never really come across that. It's never really applied to me, but basically that means that if you lapse a card 8 times in a row, it will pause that card and you won't see it again. So then that means you can go into your suspended. If you go into browse, you can see suspended here. And then, you can edit the card, manipulate the card, and wonder why, figure out why you keep forgetting that card and maybe make adjustments accordingly. That's what that's for. Okay, that's it there. General, ignore answer times. Okay, I have changed this one from 60 seconds. I've changed mine to 180 seconds, and I'll just explain why. Show answer timer, these options are, optional, like, mess around with it if you want. Obviously, all of the options are optional to change. Description doesn't really make a difference. So, and that's just a description for this deck or the option group anyway. So, answer times. There's a good thing in Anki that shows, if you click on this stats button, you can see your statistics. And you can see like how many cards have been studied today. If I just click on this and click for the collection. So obviously you can have like different time periods. Basically, this statistics page lets you track how you're doing. How many cards you've been doing a day, and certain lapses, how many cards you've added, intervals, and how they're progressing and whatnot. See total, like how many unseen cards you have, how many young or learned ones, how many mature cards. Those are basic cards you've seen a lot and you're quite comfortable with. They're the ones that have long, month-long intervals now. Suspended, buried cards. It's good to see like how you're progressing, but it also times safe daily how many reviews you've done, and how long it takes. So it says 6 cards were studied in 2 minutes today. What that option does is it does what it says basically. Ignore answer times longer than, in this case, 180 seconds. So say if you just sit on a card like this. If you sat on this card for more than 180 seconds, and then you answer the card, it won't actually count the time to this time here, if that makes sense. By default, it's 60 seconds, and I found that some of my cards, because some of my cards are very detailed, it would actually take me more than 60 seconds to answer it. So if I did that and then, so it took me more than 60 seconds to answer a card, but because by default it was set ignore answer times longer than 60 seconds, later on when I'd look at how much time I'd spent studying cards today, it said that I studied like 100 cards in 20 minutes. But that's because it ignored a lot of my answer times that were longer than 60 seconds. But it still counts that you studied the card. So I extended it out to 180 seconds because I don't think I really have any cards that take me longer than that to answer. And if it does, it's probably just because I selected that card to answer, but then I locked my phone and I just didn't answer it because I got distracted doing something else. So that's that. It's an option to choose. If you want to change it, you can. If you don't really care about your timings and tracking how long you're taking per card, then that's up to you. But that option's there. And yeah, that's basically the options. One thing I do want to mention is, if I just go back to my other profile, that obviously you can have option groups for each subdeck within a master deck. However, only the master deck option applies. If I click on this subdeck and click options, you say your changes will affect. Okay, let's not choose this one. Let's choose this one. So within this, I have LCRS2 applied to the LCRS one. So I can have a certain amount of reviews, but obviously the master option groups is going to take precedent. That's just there if you start getting confused as to why certain things aren't updating for your subdecks. That's because your master deck options do end up taking precedent. So for example, say if I had on here options for 750 reviews, it says parent limit 9999. So the parent in this case is the option groups for the 2 deck. So yeah, that's how that works. That's a small detail, but I don't know, just wanted to mention it. And that's basically all the options you'll come across in terms of adjusting how your cards come up. Okay, so now I'm going to walk through and talk you through about filter decks and custom decks, finally, that I've been mentioning throughout this entire video, and basically how you can use that to fine-tune what cards you're going to be studying, and have full control over how everything's being sent to you via Anki. So yeah, the reason I do it is I like to have things very random. I like to have all of my information interspersed, so I'm always having to pick at different parts of my brain to recall random bits of information that are, sometimes unrelated. Yeah, using tags and using filtered decks allows you to have less actual decks whilst keeping everything very organized. The reason for that, so when I was talking about randomization works better in filtered decks earlier on, so say if I want to study my year 2 deck, master deck, so I just want to study everything within my year 2 deck, and you see I have 13 due cards for that. And now what will happen is, although I have it set to mix, to randomize the order I see my cards in, to randomize my reviews, what it does is, because of the way Anki works and the way it's structured, is it will go through the subdecks individually. So it will go through anatomy and we'll see, are there any due cards? No, there aren't. So then it'll go to LCRS. Are there any due cards? Yes, there are 8. So now it will show me these LCRS cards, but it will randomize those 8 cards and they'll come up in random orders. But it will only keep it within this subdeck. Then once I've seen all of those 8 LCRS cards, it'll go down to MCD, there are none there. Then it'll go to year 1 overlap. And then it will see there are 5 cards there. And then it will show me those 5 cards, but obviously in a random order. However, I didn't want that. I wanted it, so say if I'm going to study this and I've got 13 due cards, and even though they're in separate subdecks, they're split between separate subdecks, I want it to say, pick a card from LCRS, then 1 from year 1 overlap, and then, maybe 2 from LCRS. Just completely random between these 2 decks as well. However, Anki doesn't do that by itself. It just doesn't work like that. So then this became a problem when I was later on studying and I had a lot of reviews and stuff, and I'd be getting loads that are related to the same topic, even though they were showing, I'd be getting loads of MCD cards, for example, and even though they were all kind of randomized and stuff, they were still kind of related, and I'd get bored of just seeing 100 MCD cards in a row. I want some LCRS ones and some other random ones as well, just to keep me interested and engaged. So, but that wouldn't happen. So the way to get around that was through tagging, and then using filtered decks. And what filtered decks are these blue ones that you see here. So forget the fact that I have 2 right now, but you see I have year 2 review. So if I go into the options for this, you'll see this. So what is my filter for this filtered deck? It is to look at any cards in deck year 2, deck 2, and only look at due cards, so review these green ones, and then only pick out cards that are tagged with year 2 or tagged with year 1-2 overlap. That might make no sense, and I'll set the limit to 9999 just to bring out all of them, and I've selected it to random. And I've also got reschedule cards based on my answers in this text. So what I do is, if I go in this, I've got these kind of cards going. I've got this here, so what layer is that? It's the ependymal layer. And now you'll see my options down here. If I click good, if I go back to my decks, you'll see that it's okay, that didn't really count. I'll quickly do it again. Effects of somatostatin, go through that. How did I find that? Let's just say I found it fairly hard. Now if I go back to my decks, you'll see it now only has 239. You're probably wondering, where did that card go? Because in this option, it pulled out all of my cards from year 2, from the year 2 deck. Basically, when a card is completed or studied from a filtered deck, it goes back to its original deck, but it also keeps its scheduling times if you have this checked. So I told that card to come up in 18 days. So it goes back to its normal deck, whichever one it's in, and it will come back up in 18 days within the normal deck. What this essentially does, so if I just click on this and I click rebuild, you'll see that all of these cards disappeared and they went into this review deck. That's because all of my reviews here, I've set this up so it picks out all of these review cards that are due in my year 2 deck, and it puts them into this custom review deck. And what it does is that it just pulls it out. It pulls out all of the relevant cards, And then because all of those relevant cards are just all next to each other, they're not separated within subdecks, it can truly randomize all of them. I hope that makes sense, but it was a very niche kind of thing that was just really irritating me. So that's why I study like this. And now the reason it pulled out all of them is because it's what I said. I said to pick out all the due cards in deck 2 which have the tag year 2 or year 1-2 overlap. All of my cards in my year 2 deck in these 3 subdecks here have the year 2 tag. So it pulls out all of them. And all of my year 2 cards in the year 1 overlap deck have the year 1-2 overlap tag. So it pulls out all of them accordingly. And in here, I've only selected due cards as well. If you look at and that's why this is my year 2 review custom deck. If I look at my year 2 new custom deck, it's exactly the same, except it's only pulling out new cards. So it looks at these decks and it pulls out new cards from all of them randomly, and then it shows them to me randomly. So that's why when I said that this option here, showing new cards after reviews or showing them mixed, it doesn't really apply to me because I separate them out myself anyway using custom decks, and then I can prioritize my reviews over my new cards, or the other way around depending on my workload. So that's what I use custom decks for. However, it doesn't stop there. So I'll quickly show you how to create filtered or custom decks. So the first way is to go into Tools and then click Create Filtered Decks, and it'll come up with the same kind of options that I had here. And now you can have this kind of piece of text, Create Filtered Deck, and you just type a similar thing, and you can type in what tags to choose from, and then obviously limit the cards, and then cards selected by random, or there are quite a few, so you can customize it to how you want. And so yeah, that way is quite hard to make the filtered deck if you don't know what to type, and it's a bit tedious to change the tags around or add new tags. If you just click on an empty deck which has no due or new cards, if you click on that and then just click Custom Study, you will basically create a filtered deck. So you can choose what to do. You can say study by card, state, or tag. So now I can study, let's say I want to do due cards, and then I'll choose the tags. I can either require one or more of these tags or exclude certain tags. So let's say it has to have the bioavailability tag. If I click OK, it says no cards match your criteria. That's because they're in a different option, just ignore that. But in that case, it would pull out all of the relevant cards, the ones that are due with the tag bioavailability. I'll just delete this though. And that's how you can create it. So obviously, you can go in here, click Custom Study to create a filtered deck, study by card, state, tag. Obviously, you can choose any of these. It's up to you. Select a maximum amount of cards. If you want to do all cards in random order for cramming mode, 1 or 2 days before the exam, you just want to choose a bunch of cards only from a specific few lectures though. So let's choose this. We'll choose tags, and then require one or more of these tags. And you can, because remember I said I tag everything by lecture, I can go through and tag and select just specific tags which are just for lectures. Or I can do a more overall thing. Say if I just want to do MCD, I can just do MCD. And obviously these lectures here are included within MCD, but it just gives me the option. So I can select this and this just for those 2 lectures, or even that one, or it doesn't have to be all related. I could do some virology as well just to get all crammed in. So yeah, I'll just delete that as well. When you delete a custom deck, you'll just be like, oh, I just deleted a bunch of cards. When you delete a custom deck, all of the cards in here return to their normal original decks. So there's no loss of cards. And when you study them, like I said earlier, it will go back to the original deck as well. And then what you do, like say the next day, if the deck is still here, what I do is I keep those decks here and I just click rebuild. Because say tomorrow, it will say you have a few due in anatomy, you have a few due in LCRS. I don't want them in here. I want them all to come into my review custom deck. I'll just click options, click rebuild, and then they'll just all come into here. That's what I showed you earlier when I had a few in LCRS and year 1 overlap. I clicked rebuild and they all just got transferred into here because of the options. And those are the two ways you can create filtered decks on the computer. However, I do actually prefer creating the filtered decks on the iOS app and manipulating the the options for the filtered deck on my phone or my iPad, because you don't have to go around and type in each tag and stuff. It's a lot on the app. It uses user interface buttons rather than having to type it in yourself. So it becomes a lot easier. So yeah, that's basically everything relating to custom decks and how I use them. So basically I do all of my studying through custom decks. I just have these kind of here for organization. And say if I do want to study LTRS on its own, I can just do that instead of having to create a custom deck for it. But yeah, just to kind of recap, easiest way on a computer is just click on an empty deck, basically, click on custom study, choose what you kind of want to do. I usually do study by card state or tag, new or due cards, or random order for all of them. Click choose tags, choose what kind of tags you want. Yeah, it gives you the ability to study by module, study by lectures, or study by, say, if you want to do all of LCRS but then 1 or 2 MCD lectures as well, you can even do that. Select something or do a bit of anatomy or do some of this, or just select all of year 2. It's pretty flexible in terms of what you want, and it really does allow you to kind of manipulate what cards you're seeing in terms of what you want to see. What I'm going to do now is quickly go over into the Anki app, so you can see the interface of that. I'll do a quick run through. It will be quite brief because it's fairly self-explanatory. It's nice. It's got a nice user interface that's very simple and basic. And I'll also show you how to do the custom decks and filter decks in there, which is a lot easier to manage.
Okay, so this is what the Anki iOS app looks like, and I'm just going to go through a quick run through on how this app is. It's very similar to the actual application on the computer, but yeah, I'll just show you 1 or 2 things that might help get your way around it. So just starting off, you can see how it looks pretty similar to how I had it on the computer, because it's got my current profile, like my normal profile, loaded. For the first time, you're probably just going to have to click synchronize in the bottom right hand corner, and then it will ask you to enter your login details for your Anki Web account. And then when you do that, make sure you click download from Anki Web instead of upload. Uploading will essentially just erase all of your data, so don't do that, please. So yeah, let's quickly go through it. Basically, the way you study a deck is you just click on it like normal. So let's look at this year 2 review, and you just go through, just click anywhere on the screen and it will just come up. Same exact thing with the options at the bottom. You'll see a few things that are different. You see at the top you have add, edit, and find. Add means you can just add a card to that deck, creating a card like normal. Obviously the functionality is a bit different. You can't do all of the image occlusion stuff as well on here and everything. However, you can use image occlusion cards fine. You can see here image occlusion cards come up just like you expect them to, like that. It's still got the toggle masks. Yeah, so at the top you also have edit. So say if you see a mistake, you can go through and edit your cards like normal. That's fine. And you still also have your find tool, which is absolutely insane. Still find anything you want relating to anything. I should type in sell, and then all of my cards that have the word sell in there somewhere will come up. So yeah, that's still extremely useful to use. In terms of certain settings, so you still have all of your statistics that you can just check around and look at, make yourself feel happy. You have settings next to that. You don't really need to mess with anything. One thing that might be useful though is going into the review option, and in here you've got your scheduling and whatnot. But the main thing is there's this shake action here. So if you shake your phone or your iPad or something, it will, I think by default it's set to undo, so it will basically undo the review you did. I turned off shake action because I frequently use Anki on my phone whilst walking, and if I have my phone by my side while walking, it takes it as a shake and it undoes whatever I did, so I found it pretty annoying. But then in the end you got all of these tap shortcuts, swipe shortcuts, the tool buttons, which you can also edit. The tool buttons are, if you go into a study, you click tools here. Your tool buttons are these first 8 that you see, and if you click on more, obviously you have all of them in here.
However, you can select which ones that come up as the quick access tool buttons. So if we go back on review, yeah, I mean, you can just go through it, fiddle around with it. There's not that much in here. But yeah, in terms of creating a custom deck, say if you just go on any deck like this and then you click on, or let's just say the year 2 deck, then if you click on tools in the top right hand corner, you can click custom study, and then again, very similar to the computer, except I just think it looks nicer. For some reason it's easier for me to use on here. You can do whatever, preview all cards with a certain tag, review ahead, preview new cards, whatever. See, cram all cards with a certain tag, and then include tags, and select whichever tags you want, or exclude certain tags, and you can exclude certain tags you want, and then just click done and it will just create that for you. All of your mark, undo, bury notes, you've probably seen that, it's all there. And yeah, every time, say you've studied a few cards, let's say this, and then I study another card, that's all right, and then you just click back. Well, once you're done, if you haven't done all of them, that's fine, and then just click synchronize in the bottom right hand corner. I'm not connected to the internet right now, but otherwise it would sync. And then so if you sync on here, and then whenever you go onto a different device, say if I go onto my phone or if I go onto my computer, then I'll click sync again, and then all of the changes that I made on here, like the cards that I studied and whatnot, they will also, all of the data will synchronize up. So you've got a kind of free flow workflow in the way that everything's quite seamless. So I really do recommend getting the app if you do plan on really utilizing Anki. You can save a lot of spare time where, say if you're just waiting around for a bit, you're just waiting for a friend to come from somewhere, you're just waiting for 10 minutes, just bang out a few cards. You're on the tube commuting or something, you're sitting there or standing there, just do a few cards. That's what I did, just always utilizing my time. This kind of stuff is best done, in little but often chunks, rather than just spending 3 hours a day in one go just doing it. But yeah, I think that's about it. Hopefully I've covered everything. Hopefully everything made sense. I know I probably waffled on and repeated myself at least, 3-4 times at some cases, but I guess I just want to kind of get the points across and, kind of be quite holistic on the approach to using Anki and how you can manipulate everything, adjust everything to your liking. And hopefully you've learned all of that. So yeah, if you have any questions or, want me to make a video regarding anything else or anything, I guess, email me, message me, whatever, just get in contact with me and I'll be happy to answer any questions or queries that you have. Apart from that, I hope you enjoyed it. I know it's quite long, probably like around 2 hours or something, but yeah, I do hope it's helped, and I wish you the best of luck with, medical school or whatever else you use Anki for. And yeah, I'm out.